Hello, my friends. Hope you had a fantastic day or night. This week, we're back with a brand new wildlife and sort of commercial conversation related to how to get started in filmmaking. This week, we're going to be talking to Simon all about how he went about actually filming the video that I found him through, but also how we should change our mindset around actually how we create content, why we create content, and also how we actually really look to gain clients as we move forward in our career. So thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me once again, and I'll now hand over to past me to conduct this interview. But thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me. If you did enjoy this interview, why not be subscribed so you do not miss next week's episode, and I'll see you very, very soon.
I am Simon McCabe. I'm a media professional in my full-time role, and in my out of professional sense, I'm a wildlife lover and enthusiast. So,
Thank you
yeah.
ever so much for the time, Simon. And I was debating where to think about it, where to start the episode, because I get questions quite a lot on like how do I choose my guests, and it was funny because about a month and a half ago or so, I started getting into wildlife more as a hobbyist, but also I think on a similar kind of journey as you, in the respect to we're looking to potentially make some money from it down the line, whether that's through other production houses, etc. And I'm sure that'll be something that we discuss in this show. But I think this would be interesting for you to hear as well, and that's why I want to bring it to the show. I actually was doing some research on, I think it was a barn owl video originally, and then I got suggested your content for YouTube. And I was like, okay, cool. So this guy clearly is interested in a minimum interested, but also, for me, I didn't until just before this episode, I didn't realize that you weren't a pro. And I think that's a misconception that we sometimes have, which is, okay, well, what's that definition of a pro wildlife videographer, right? Is it quality?
Yes.
Is it the fact that we make our living from it? Is it the fact that actually, just because it's a hobby or just because we do it on the side of our actual commercial jobs, whether that's a full-on commercial job or commercial work regarding videography or a creative director or etc., whichever role you fall into production-wise, does that make us less pro? Would be I guess the question in your opinion?
Yeah, I think being a professional, in my sense, being a professional is being paid for the job. I mean, to be honest, my professional role at the moment, I'm in media and production. I work in the outdoor sector, and so I kind of get to mix, my passion and my full-time work, which I love. I'm very, very lucky in that way. Um, but I think being professional, it's all about standards.
Mm.
For me, I want to try and get the best standard as I can out of my equipment and out of my head, which is always, it's it's a massive learning curve. And I've only really started sort of focusing on the wildlife, which I think is a very tricky subject in itself anyway. Getting people to do what you're told, that's easy. You can either write them a script or you can tell them what to do, but wildlife doesn't work
Yeah.
like that. You have to try and capture that moment in a fleeting second with whatever technology you can. Um, and also, I think the professional side of it as well is learning craft. Like fieldcraft. Certainly in wildlife, it's if you've got the budget to buy a 1200 millimeter lens, yes, that's great. But actually, if you use fieldcraft, use a 300 and get closer
Mm.
and have a better experience. That's my my take on it. Um, I was kind of brought up to appreciate wildlife. Actually, a lot of it I'm going to give praise to a good friend of mine called Lloyd French, who would take me out and just get me really close to wildlife. Take away the camera,
Mm.
and that's one thing I'm trying to do is kind of almost like put the camera down a little bit and look at the wildlife. But the experience I learned with him was actually, fieldcraft is a massive, massive part of wildlife photography, videography,
Mm.
and that's kind of one of the the key things that I'm trying to home at the moment is trying to get to a location, to get in the right place where the wind is not blowing my scent across the trails, and uh, find out where I'm hidden, But at the same time, you can be very sneaky with wildlife if you position yourself in the right place. You're very quiet. Even the idea of actually leaving a few little peanuts everywhere and then just to sort of tempt them out. You can get really close to wildlife, and it actually just makes your life a lot easier. It means you're not out on all the zooms, making your images darker, making it more
Mm,
difficult,
mm.
piece to shoot. But yeah, fieldcraft is a big key, and I think that's all part of that professional approach, is to learn every aspect of your
Yeah,
art.
and I think it's really important because when I started and I started really thinking about, okay, yeah, let's see what we can do with wildlife and etc. It's like nothing else I've ever done commercially, right? As you say, when you're doing a
Yeah,
corporate interview, when you're doing an event, it's pretty predictable, right, etc. Right? There's obviously benefits for me. What I've found, just takeaways, because I'm used to tracking birds or I'm used to tracking subjects that are moving rather quickly, e.g., animals. When it comes to
yes,
corporate work where I'm tracking a human, sorry humans, you're a lot slower,
yeah,
so my life is easier. The thing is though, I think exactly what you said just about fieldcraft, but also I think about so much of what we do. I think we sometimes think, oh, I need to get that shot, right? Because we see all these people on Instagram who are either really, really good at X or Y, right? And they've got this incredible shot, whether it's a one piece or whether it's a small sequence or whether it's a video, right? And I
yes,
think we don't know the story, we don't know the context, we don't know the years, we don't know the experience, we don't know the energy, we don't know the hours, we don't know the work that went in to get that shot. And I think it's this classic, to an extent, social media realms of everything is a highlight reel because we don't know the story behind it. And what I
that's right.
really, really like about what you just said was the concept of sometimes just taking the camera out and just experiencing nature for the sake of experiencing it, rather than I'm here
Yes,
to get a shot, right? Yes, of course that's important.
yeah.
Yes, of course we're looking to do that. But how did you? I mean, you said it was obviously a passion or an interest that you had for a very long time. What were you always like then, as you built into your media career, going, well, actually, I can create films around it? Like, what made you shift into that? I want to be a wildlife cameraman, so to speak.
Um, I've always been a wildlife lover. Since I was young, I was brought up fishing and being outside with my friends, and that kind of very typical story of growing up in the wild, making camps and walking down streams when you shouldn't be. Um, and I think I kind of surrounded myself with the same kind of same-minded people who are into being outside, not just particularly just wildlife, but I was very, very lucky to, when I lived in Sussex, I had a very good friend whose father was a wildlife painter. And that's where I kind of started my love of drawing and art. And, I'd go to their house and he'd be studying wings of a bat, and, there'd be animals everywhere. And it just, he opened my eyes to a lot of wildlife. And I think from the age of 16 to 25, I became not a twitcher. I'm not a twitcher. I became, I was into my birds, which then obviously then you merge that into mammals and other wildlife that, surround us. And I say fishing was a big part of my life. My father brought me up with fishing, and you know, when you're on the bank, when you're on a 20-acre lake surrounded by woods, you're going to see wildlife. And I think that's, the whole appreciation thing of not just, I want to catch a big fish. You take in the whole surroundings. Um, but yeah, I think the sort of growing up, I've always had an appreciation for the wildlife. I think as I've matured, I've moved into sort of more the conservation and, the groups of people who are there to support our wildlife and our nature and everything around us, which is super important. Um, but yeah, at the moment I'm trying to balance my love with this kind of whole new skill. It's not a whole new skill. I've been in art and design and film for a long, long time, but probably in the last 10 years, I've sort of thought, actually, I could do both here. It started with photography, and then actually um, I love photography. I love capturing that still moment, but I think there is a magic in creating video. And obviously in the last 15 years of actually the increase of video work on social media, it's just a no-brainer really for me, especially doing what I do as well. So
No, absolutely.
yeah.
No, I completely agree, and I think it's been a really interesting time, and I think it'll be a really interesting time to look back in another 10 years, another 15 years to see, okay, is video still very prominent, and or where is the world, where are we, what are we doing, etc. But I think something that really stood apart and still does stand apart to me is a couple of elements in a lot of your films that I haven't noticed in others, specifically the voiceover element when it comes to your show reel, that I'm sure we'll get onto in a moment, but also you, to an extent, you incorporate yourself in your wildlife films, which in some ways it feels counterintuitive, but I get why you're doing it. But what was the thought process behind, did they happen together? Is, I guess, the question. But then also, like, if they did, what kind of spurred that creative decision? Because I think it's very easy to have like a scissor reel or a Caesar reel of, here's some beautiful wildlife shots, right? That you can probably capture, let's be honest, in maybe a season, maybe 2 seasons, maybe a year total, right? You can probably get something like that within a year of, I'm going to achieve this goal, I'm aiming to do this, I'm going to build a habit around, I'm going to go shoot XYZ animal, and work out how to do that. I mean, what do you think it's one of those things that will stand you apart and or does stand you apart? And if so, how did you sort of come up with it? Because I feel it's really unique, and I haven't seen, especially the voiceover element, I haven't personally seen it, and it's a lot of extra effort that some people would go, yeah, no.
Yeah. No, I think one thing that I've always loved to do through my career, through my friends, through everything is actually storytelling. Actually give somebody a journey. And I think a lot of films, like you were saying there, you can glue pieces together, and this is the experiences that I've had, how they're linked and how they transition. You kind of almost like you can leave it up to the imagination to do it, which is great. But for me, I want to narrate a story, and I feel that when I'm actually out there doing that thing, where it's pointing a camera at the water or the fish or a mammal, I want to tell people what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and almost like walking them through the experience. That's a big part for me. I love obviously film and media, and I watch everything and anything, streaming services, cinema. I love bringing in a story into my own work. I don't know if it's unique, obviously Mr. Attenborough is like, for me, like the best storyteller in that way, and whether he, writes this piece after he's seen these pieces glued together, which is pretty much what I do. I haven't tried to copy his style. I just think that actually, with my experience and with the amount of time that I have to do things, I kind of want to explain what I'm doing, basically. That's kind of the bottom line. And I feel that some people like my voice, some people don't. I like telling a story, and I like to write narrative, and I like to glue pieces together. Instead of using a dissolve transition, I'm going to tell you about that dissolve and why. The dissolve is a space of time where something happens, where I can do that with my voice. But yeah, I guess that it's all about narrative. It's all about the storytelling, just to keep people flowing through a piece. Really.
Do you think that there's a lot of people, because I know you also film yourself. I mean, this could be actually like either creating content, talking to camera. In example, I'll leave the barn owl video that I'm referring to in the description for those interested. But in that video you talk about what you're doing in a vlog-esque style, and that's personally something that I do, but also I really connect with as a filmmaker, but as an audience member as well. And I think, what made you go that approach? Because it would be very easy just to go, okay, today I'm going to go and try and film some barn owls, right? And then your sole focus is, I'm just going to try and capture these animals, or just going to capture, and I use a barn owl as an example, it could be any animal, right? But
Yes. Yeah.
what made you want to, I guess, take, is it just that storytelling element again, or was there more to it in the respect to, because sometimes, when I look and do stuff potentially corporate-y, or potentially when I know something's going to get quite a lot of attention. For example, at the time of filming, we've just finished the opening of Salisbury International Arts Festival, right? Categorically, that's going to get attention. It just is, right? It's one of the big things a year. I know it's going to get viewership. Therefore, it's one of those things I try to squeeze as much content as I can from whilst we're covering it for myself, but also the people we partner with to do it. And was it that, or was it a balance between the two? I'm just interested in your thought process on, like, because I don't think anyone, if they're not natural used to vlogging and creating that kind of social presence content, they wouldn't necessarily rise to, oh, I'm going to now talk about what I'm actually doing, and also showing the failures as well.
That's yes, yeah. Showing failures. I don't do so much. I have done the failure side of it in my fishing, because you fail a lot in fishing. Well, I do anyway. And it's one of those things that you got to show the failures. You've got to show people to learn, and I think in the fishing industry, it's all about how big you can catch this big fish and how quick you can do it, how many you can catch. But I think there's a story or there's a narrative that says, actually, I didn't catch. And here's the reason why I think, and I'm going to try it again next time. And it's the same with wildlife as well. You can go to a location. The barn owl, for instance. I've been walking in a state. It's about 3 or 4 miles away from where I live, and I've walked there for a few years. I've never seen the barn owl there. Never seen it. Heard, never seen it. And I use social media. I use community groups to find out what's going on, and I recognized somebody talking about this location, got in touch. He gave me an X marks the spot on the map, and it took me 2 nights to find him, and then probably a couple of nights just to find a location. But actually, at that time, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do a vlog. I'm going to record myself filming, this beautiful, beautiful owl, hopefully. Luckily, I did see him. I think part of it was also I wanted to educate people what I was doing. It wasn't just a case of, here it is. Look at this. Look at me. I'm great. I've just filmed this wonderful thing. I told them about what camera I'm using, why I'm using it, my location. I didn't give the location of the bird away because I don't agree with that so much. But part of the thinking was actually, if you wanted to do that, and I think that's another part of my mission is, if you want to do this, you can do it as well by taking the information that I can give you, and it will help you. And I think that's part of the sort of the vlogging mindset, is that hopefully somebody else can go, oh, that's a good idea, or that's a good lens, or that's a good position to be in, and do the same thing, really. Did it when I actually got the footage back, because it's one of those things like you will know when you get back to the studio and you just, fingers crossed, you've got sharp footage, you've set the right frame weights, you've got ticked all the boxes. And I think I ticked maybe 80% of my boxes that I wanted. I didn't get him perched, which I got him in his actual home, which was lovely, but I wanted to get him flying between the trees, and I just found that very, very difficult. But when I got home, I then thought, actually, how to write the narrative for this. I'd obviously recorded the piece of camera about what lens I'm using. I'd recorded the pieces to camera about where I was, and I've glued it all together and written the narrative on top of it. I have a way of doing my narrative as well, and whether you're doing it like the Foley guys do, where you sit back and you watch this thing and you mumble to yourself and you talk and you start writing. You start writing a piece, adding the parts where you think it needs a bit of help to carry it. And I think that's the key. Is the story evolved. I wasn't there to just do that piece. It just evolved when I got back to the studio, as most of my films do.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point, because we can have this vision, I think, sometimes. And I can give you a couple of stories as well of in the wildlife world as well. I'm working on a project at the moment with Trust. We're shooting on one of their one of their nature reserves, right? And the whole goal of the project is to showcase the wildlife which they're helping actually save and build an environment for, that's then protected, right? That's the entire objective. And I had this hero shot in mind, and everyone I spoke to about this hero shot was like, that's ridiculous, that's impossible, and I was like, I couldn't get it out of my head, right? And the hero shot, and this is going to ruin the film, but the final shot in the film is a kingfisher sat on a perch and then flying away, right? And I was like, no way, it's going to take me years, it's going to be a pain in the ass, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so 2 months or so in, I got the shot, right? And I haven't released it, I haven't even edited the film yet. But now my vision for the film has changed. That's why I'm talking about it, right? Because I've got the shot I wanted, but I'm like, well, actually, what if I had a whole sequence of kingfishers? Right? What if I had an entire fishing sequence? That would be better. Let's do that. And the point that I'm making here is, like, sometimes you go on set and you go, okay, cool, I got X and Y. Okay, cool. But sometimes it's actually, that's good enough for the story I want to tell here today. Or here's another way of me telling that story. It's in a vlog. It's part of this. It's part of that. It's a small sequence on my socials, whatever. I've told that story. I've scratched that itch. Cool. Other times it's like, no, actually, no. I'm going to hold on to finish this piece and make sure it's what I actually want it to be, and what that ends up developing and changing. As I say, now the piece, if I can get it, there will be a cut-off line, right? There will be. If I can't get the kingfisher sequence I want, I'll use the original plan. But it's an example of something which is like, actually, no, I could push that a little bit further. And I guess the question comes from that, which is, where do you sit on the whole done is better than perfect, but the chasing perfection kind of argument, right? Because for me, how I see it is, it's a sliding scale, right? It's not just, sometimes you want to be closer to perfect than done. Other times you want to be, okay, it's done and out, and I can learn and I can gain feedback from my audience, so then I can iterate on the next one. Do you agree? Like, or should we always look for that? I need that one other shot to make this film quote unquote perfect.
In the barn LPs, when I reached the point of actually thinking I can't do any more, I was chasing this barn owl for hours that evening, and the sun was sort of slowly going down, and I actually thought to myself, well, whilst I'm here, I know where the badgers are. I'm going to go to the badger set and see if I can get something to add on the end, which actually turned out amazing. They came out, 3 of them came out, and I got some lovely close-up shots, within a few meters of me, and it was that was luck. For me, it was luck. I knew where they were, whether they would come out or not. Yeah, maybe I had a few tricks up my sleeve, but because I've been in sort of media and selling creative services for so long, you do get to that point when you think, actually, I need to stop this now to hand it to client. So, as a creative director, you pull a campaign together and you say, okay, well, I've got to present this to the customer to say that this is going to be it. 90% of what I would do would get the thumbs up. You'd always get that, actually, can we just tweak this or do this? So I was always in that kind of soft zone of, I know it's right, but I know it may not be the final piece that goes out. And I kind of use that same analogy with my wildlife as well. Fishing is a very interesting subject because you just don't know when you're going to catch. So what are you going to do? What is your fallback on this? We fall back on emotion. We fall back on learning. There has to be another way to do it. And I think that part of something that's unfinished has actually got a real beauty to it as well. Because then you can come back and do it again. If you get that perfect shot, and I haven't got that yet, but when I do get it, will that be it? I just remember the film Mitty, where he climbs, Sean Penn's sitting on the rock and he's looking at the snow leopard, but he's not filming it because he doesn't want to end that experience. And that was quite a nice nice thing to sort of like use in your own, experience. But yeah, to be honest with you, I've never had that end piece where I thought that is it. That's the shot. I'm never going to get another one, because I know you can get.
I think it's one of those things where you constantly evolve and change, evolve and change, evolve and change. And I think you just sort of, it's not that you're never gonna, like say for example, you get a perfect sequence of barn owls in your case, or kingfishers in my case, whatever. It's not like you're never gonna film those animals ever again, right? It's not that.
No.
It's at what point do you draw a line under it for this project, for this deliverable, for this post, for this project, for this goal, for this objective, whatever it may be. And I also would think there's there's loads of psychological studies I could use, but the one that keeps standing to mind to me is there's a pottery class version, there's a painting class version. The TLDR version is too long to read. Is you need to do it repeatedly to get better at it, to learn from those 1% improvements every time, rather than I'm going to just make this one perfect film and I'm never going to release it until it's absolutely perfect, because you'll never actually release it. And it's always better to release it slightly unfinished, slightly unpolished to you, because there's wiggle room to improve, so that when you come back in a year, you'll go, well, actually that wasn't very good, but here's what I've done, right?
Yes.
And that might just be simply like, and something that I've noticed as I've talked to more wildlife people as well, is like, how do you build trust with the animals, right? Because maybe people who aren't doing it and aren't doing the craft as much, they maybe don't realize, and I was actually quite surprised with how intelligent animals are, animals quote unquote are, but they will realize quite quickly if you're not a threat. Because from my understanding, all their brains going is it going to kill me, or am I going to kill it? That's it. That's kind of the two states. And once it realizes that you're not going to kill it, they're like, okay, meh, whatever.
Yeah. It's relationship forming time.
Yeah.
That's
but it does pose a question, which is, how do we, maybe not, in an owl's case or a kingfisher's case, but, for those who, and you may not know, but I'm just sort of thinking out loud, how would we go about being cautious or safe, right? Because there is going to be some people who are looking to, I don't know, film bears or film or capture in general, larger animals like tigers, etc., etc. And by no means are you an expert, but what do you think people? And it sounds like I'm trying to, common sense, sure, but is there practical stuff? Is there stuff to think about that you would think about if you were in that situation? Because I think it's a part that we don't necessarily discuss enough, and I think it's important to, firstly, for the sake of the people coming up who maybe want to do wildlife, but also for the safety of the animal, but also for the safety of you.
Yeah. I love the Jurassic Park saying of, just because you can doesn't mean you should. That kind of wildlife is wild. It needs to be in its natural state. And I think that if you're going to film tigers, for instance, don't go out and buy a 600mm lens, head over to India, sit in the tall grass and wait to be eaten, because you're just writing that script, aren't you? Really, that'd be an amazing film. But I think a lot of it does come down to common sense, research. Research is key. Even the idea of sitting watching an owl. How close are you to that owl? You've got a lot of responsibility on your shoulders to make sure that you're not doing things that will frighten it away or cause any harm. People using apps to call birds in, is it the right thing or the wrong thing to do? There's a lot of research to think about. It's not, thinking things like certainly safety. If you're talking about safety, make sure in a place where you're going to be safe, yourself. I've been in situations where I've had cameras in towns and cities, and you think, it's an easy snatch. This, you could be sitting on the side of a road getting the road shot. All it takes is somebody just to come. It's just. I think it is common sense. There's a lot of common sense, but at the same time, if the experience is out there to take it, and you've kind of do your due diligence and actually get all those things ticked off, then just you've got to do it. That is the utmost importance. That is, you have to go and live it and give it a go. If it's safe, and if it's safe for both you and the
Yeah,
subject.
and
That's
I
key.
also think there's you kind of alluded to it as well. There's a level of morals, right? And I was always told, watch the behavior of the animal. Of course, the research says, but when you're on set, watch the behavior of the animal. Are they acting natural? Are they would they normally
Yes.
do right? So, like for example, if you would naturally be on a walk and a deer would run away from you, okay, a deer's going to run away from you. That's a deer.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
acting normal in my eyes, right? From my point of view, right? Or I don't know, but like, are they not going to the nest or whatever it may be? Like, are they acting like at what you would see as out of character or what would be out of character? And if they are,
Yeah.
back off, right? Like,
Yeah.
just back off or pack up and go home for the day or whatever it may be, because it's one of those things where and the best saying, or the best kind of saying I was told when I was starting out by a good my ex-coach but also a good friend of mine said, think about it as you've already mentioned as well, it's a relationship built with that environment, it's a relationship built with those animals, etc. And you need to build trust, and you need to earn, to an extent, arguably you need to earn the right to actually get to a position, whether that's like enough time has passed so you're good enough with the camera kit you've got, and or you built your career enough so you can afford to buy the 1200mm lens or 600mm extender or
Yes.
whatever it ends up being,
Yeah. Yeah.
so you can get that full frame shot but you're however far away, and or the animals that you're going to be capturing,
Yeah.
they won't know. It's quite hard to describe, but they won't know you, but they won't see you as a threat because they'll similarly get to know you. Because if you're in and around the environment, again, this is a guess, this is an assumption, but they'll get used to you and your presence, and they'll sort of feel it out a little bit more. And it'll be like, okay, this person, this entity, this human, isn't
Yeah.
isn't a threat to me necessarily.
I
And
know.
I think it goes without saying, don't take the piss, but that's kind of easy to say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, have you had experience with that? Like, do you agree with that? What are your views on that? Because I think that's the bit we don't talk about enough, because we're all like
Yeah.
chasing the shot, quote unquote.
Well, this comes back to the kind of professional label. If you're doing it commercially and you have a goal, you it's like being the paparazzi. You've got to get a shot of X celebrity. Don't care about their life. You've chased them down. You take away their freedom. And it's same thing for wildlife. If you get to that point where actually you think, the bird's calling, it's an alarm call, or the badger's turning quick turns away from you. Yeah, it's kind of you're responsible for like your own actions, and you should be like backing off and reading the signs. Um, there are ways, obviously, once you get to that point of actually forming a relationship. If you sit in the same place every day and something comes to you, fabulous. That's amazing. That's a dream, because nobody's got the time to do it, really. But I think there is a point when I my stuff isn't for sale. So for me, I don't have that pressure. If I do see it, great. If I don't see it, I'll go back and try again. So, but when you've got money involved, and I have done recently I've done quite a few sort of commercial jobs in wildlife, where you have to try and get what the director wants you to get, and that is uh, the relationship there is between you and the director, not you and the animal. It's to say to the director, you're not going to get that. You've scripted it, but I can't make birds do this, and I can't, unless we're going to do it in some sort of a closed format. We can't do that. Anything that is potentially, I mean, and the other thing is that audiences are so on the ball now. They'll tell you if there's a problem, and if you're recording a bird and it's giving you warning signs, and you think this is a beautiful thing, it's amazing, great thing, but actually somebody will say, well, actually that bird is warning you and telling you to leave, or that bear is growling at you and it's licking its lips. you know
Yeah,
there's you kind of got to read those signs, and if you don't read them, somebody else will read them to you.
yeah.
And certainly in this game, there has to be a level of you take responsibility for what you deliver. um, Fishing is it's a difficult one, because lots of people don't like fishing. they think it's cruel. They think it's a blood sport. Um, I don't want to get into that now, but it is for me. I've grown up with it. I don't agree with that, and part of me just I'm going to do it as humanely as I can. I'm going to educate to do it as
Mm.
well because I think it's a wonderful pastime for kids and for learning. And um, but yeah, there is a kind of definitely a point where you've just got to have a good
Yeah.
head to be able to work things out.
Yeah, and I think it's like, lots of things, or many things in life in general. Not everyone is necessarily going to agree with it necessarily in all cases, and
No,
sometimes that's okay. Okay, cool. Sometimes you can take that as
yeah,
feedback and go, okay, like what does that mean? How do I internalize that? Like, and that's I think the kind of takeaway from this part would be, what do you feel morally okay with? Right now,
yes,
I know
yeah,
there's going to be a percentage of people who listen to this and go, well, okay, Colton, then you're saying that it's okay to cause arguable stress and alarm to wildlife. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you're an adult, I would hope, and if you're a child listening to this, hopefully you've got parental consent and think
yeah,
about it. Think about
yeah,
what you're doing. Don't just go out and to be honest, the odds are going to be in your favor if you do the research rather than not, right? It wasn't by
yeah,
chance that I got the kingfisher shot, I can tell you. It's not by chance that
yeah,
I've got some other the keeper shots for the films I'm working on at the moment. Right now, that's because I've researched, and that's because I'm interested in those specific species. I'm like, okay, so let's
yeah.
try and understand their behavior patterns. Let's try and work out how, why, where, how, when am I going to see them, and if so, doing what, and
Yes,
and just basic things like, are they going to be in a field? Are they going to be in a wood?
yeah,
Are they going to be on a river, etc.
yeah,
And things like that. And I think it's so important. I think some people, they want a shortcut, uh, and I was
100%.
talking to a friend of mine this morning about this. They want a shortcut in anything related to filmmaking, any career, anything like that. They want to go, how do I, what piece of gear, what connection, what conversation, what da da da. The only answer, in my opinion, in the years I've done it, you have to consistently work hard and get zero results for a period of time, and then eventually there'll be a tick over that someone will see
Yes,
it. You'll make a right connection at the right time that will then, in 6 months, lead on to, I can't. There's this thing. We would love you to shoot it. Cool, great, fantastic, wonderful,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But I mean, what would you say to people who are maybe not 100% sure, or maybe not willing, or not yet ready to be like, I'm willing to eat shit for 6 months? Because I think it's really
I
hard, right? Especially at the beginning. I remember how hard
Yeah,
it was. It was like, come on, give me a chance. Come on, give me a chance.
yes. It's a very difficult thing to balance. Um, for me, I'm doing something that I love doing, and to be paid to do it, um, uh, A, I would love it, and B, I would hate it because I know the hate part of it would mean that I would be restricted and I would have to do what that says on the paper or what it says on the page. Um, I would love it because I can do what I love to do. I think there is it's a difficult thing. I say I've only stepped into the commercial side of wildlife, in the last few months, and I was given a script. I was given a list of subjects to film, list of locations, etc., and time. So I've taken time off work. I've said, right, okay, well, I flew to Taiwan. I spent 12 days at the Shan Mountain and the Gami wetlands. It was the most amazing experience ever. As a wildlife lover, enthusiast, wonderful. As a cameraman, the endemic species list that I had, difficult, very difficult. Even with a guide and a spotter, and it's wildlife.
Mm.
It doesn't do scripts. Um, but I loved the challenge. I loved that challenge of you've got to try. You've got to try and get it. And I think that anybody getting into this, you've got to go, unless you're so talented and you've got some magic way to get in front of the right people at the right time. which it does happen. Not saying it doesn't, because I don't want to put anybody off by not publicizing on LinkedIn or Insta or whatever it is. It does happen, but it takes a long, long time. And even with my own stuff, I look at it and I go, okay, is it as good as Simon King, or is it, could it be on a BBC production? Uh, in my eyes, no, not yet. It will do one day.
Mm.
But right now, it's all about knowing your art, knowing your skill set, and then knowing what the audience want, because that's the be all and end all. If you can create the most beautiful things, if people aren't interested, if you're looking for that feedback, you're looking for that recognition, it may not be there. Certainly from a wildlife point of view, people love wildlife. It's a great thing. There are a lot of people doing it. Photography, videography, there's a lot of people doing it, and it's a wonderful thing to have that big community of people doing what we do, what we love. To become professional and become somebody recognized in a commercial sense is so competitive, because you're not just fighting a skill set, you're fighting money. I've owned agencies before where we've got the capital to buy cameras or media, that if you had to hire that, they would have a difficult time to actually try and live up to that level. But I do say that you do have to chase that. Don't ever give up. Keep doing it because you love it. Don't go after the money. Go after because you love it.
And I think it's about doing it for the craft, doing it for the growth, doing it for your own personal development, and then the rest will come, right? And and I think you have to. You talk about competition. I see it as collaboration, but also competition the same way. Because of course, like if we both go for a job, one of us gets it, then it's a competition, right? Like one of us there's only one slot, and one of us is going to win, and the other, etc. But also, I think you should surround yourself with people who, even if you both went for a project, and the other person won it, they would still cheer for you. And I think that's the important element. And I think it's about, for me, being very focused on the UVU, the 1% improvements that I've already alluded to. That's like, you did this thing, you got better at this thing, you're now getting better at this thing again. Fantastic. And also understanding sometimes that maybe that client, maybe that price point, maybe etc. isn't necessarily for you, right? Either as well. And I think and I'm aware of time, so I think let's wrap up soon. But I think it's such an important mindset, skill, etc. Something I'm leaning into, which ironically wildlife actually really helps with, is being really patient and really grateful for either what you have or what you get, but then also be very patient and just continue to work hard expecting their results, because then the results will come, right? Now, but it won't come when you go, I need the results today. It will come when it's meant, but if you want to go woo-woo with it, it will come when it's meant to come, right?
That's right.
If you want to go mathematical with it, it will come when the probabilities are stacked in your favor. But for those people who want to see, your work, they want to follow your journey, they want to maybe see some of the content, because I know you work for a production house, so you can't actually release any yet. But when that happens in the future, some of the stuff you talked about in this episode, where's the best for people to reach out to you? Where's people to connect with you and continue this conversation outside the show?
I guess on YouTube. I put a lot of things on YouTube. I try to update my Insta as much as I can. I try to keep a bit of a professional label on it without delving too much about. You don't want to know what I'm doing all day. It's boring. I try to do those small little pockets on Insta. The usual channels, Insta, Facebook. Do lots on LinkedIn as well. But for my professional people, go to my website, which is simonmccabe.co.uk. And I think, talking about what you were just saying, I think that one thing I have really learned is the humility of actually appreciating others who have got that same skill set. I haven't got a competitive bone in my body. I've lost that long time ago. I am who I am. I do what I do. And if you do it better than me, I love that even more. If I go snowboarding, I want somebody better than me because then I can achieve faster and I can get better. If somebody's using something incredible, I can look up to them and think that's an incredible thing to do. Appreciate the environment. Don't just look at the subject, look at the environment. That is my whole take on this whole thing.
I love that. Thank you so much, Simon. And for those who are inspired by this episode, who may be looking to take something away, what final piece of advice would you give to those either starting out in business, wanting to get into wildlife, etc.? What would you leave them with?
Cliche, don't give up. Just keep doing what you love. If you're into camera work and you're into the whole technology side of it, do it. But be mindful that you're dealing with wild subjects here, and you have to love them. If you love them, they'll love you. Simple as.
Thank you so much for joining me, ladies and gents. I hope you took value from this conversation. I'll be back very, very soon with a brand new conversation to help move your business forward, regardless of what the economy does, because we're going to make the demand rather than serving that market demand. But thank you ever so much for joining me once again, and I'll see you very